DXB. It's in the game!
Hey guys, it's me Ben, back with another one of my patented off-the-cuff one-take reviews based on, well, in this case, for The Surge, dozens of hours of gameplay. And this is me, I'm going to be talking about the game. The Surge has been brought to us by Deck 13 and Focus Home Interactive. Now, what you may remember Deck 13 from was Lords of the Fallen, which came out, I believe it was last year. It might have been the year before, to be fair. And I think what everybody would think of when they saw Lords of the Fallen was, oh, it's a Dark Souls-like game. And I really wanted to get that somewhat annoying turn of phrase out of the way first. Now, to be fair, before we had the term first-person shooter, we referred to first-person shooters as Doom-like games. Games that were like Doom back in the 90s. And that's, I guess, what we've got here with The Surge. It is a Dark Souls-like game, and by that I mean third-person action-adventure of a hardcore nature. So, you've got that idea that the enemies are very dangerous and will do a lot of damage to you when you hit them, that you will need to think about their attack patterns, that you will need to think about the best ways of fighting them with your current loadout. And then, of course, we also have the Souls mechanic. In this case, in The Surge, we have this thing called Tech Scrap, and those are your souls. So when you die, you lose that, and of course you need them because they're kind of like your experience. Though not exactly, but we'll talk about the mechanics of that sort of thing shortly. First of all, let's talk about the setting of The Surge. You play as Warren. Yeah, Warren. And I don't want to give away too many spoilers about the story and the setting, because that's part of the fun of a game like this. Much like Dark Souls and those types of games, not all the story and setting is spelled out to you. It's given to you in pieces. It's given to you through the things you find in the world as you progress through it. The way the game starts, Warren, I found really evocative and interesting and engaging, and I was immediately like, oh wow, so that's where this character begins. You then are introduced very briefly to the world, and then given this opening cinematic, which was frankly disturbing, though because of its disturbing nature I actually quite enjoyed it, and I was definitely immediately engaged in that universe. You're then thrown into the open location, and what I actually preferred about The Surge to, say, a Dark Souls immediately, and I've tried to play all the Dark Souls games at various times, and I'll admit, I have bounced off every single one of them. I even bounced off Lord of the Fallen. Now, what I really liked about The Surge was the onboarding process. It's another slightly sort of buzz term for you there. But what I mean by that is those opening hours of the game that get you into the experience. I really like the way The Surge introduces you to lower level enemies, lets you get a bit of a hang of the combat, a bit of a hang of your the movement and what you have to do to deal with these enemies, rather than just throwing you straight at a boss, which is what the Dark Souls game did, especially the later ones, because they expect you to have played and beaten the previous ones. The Surge, of course, is a new IP, which means I think the developers at Deck 13 are being a bit more understanding about, the fact that a lot of people might be coming to this fresh to this type of game. Now, the big difference here between The Surge and Dark Souls and Lord of the Fallen is that instead of the fantasy setting, instead of dark fantasy, we have this sort of grim, near-ish future science fiction. And it's awesome. And you can see in the videos that basically your character is wrapped up in this exo rig. It's kind of like the loader from the Alien series, but smaller. So it basically enhances all your abilities, and that's where so much of the customization and your inventory and your specking of your character will go into. And obviously, they'll have some distinctive visual changes to the Exo Rig based on what you do with it. So you can go, you can class and specify your character down a very quick and nimble route, which is one that I found myself lending towards and going towards as I played the game. Or you can spec yourself down at the other end, a very heavy route, a much slower combat route, or anywhere in between. There are thousands, if not more, combinations of weapons and armor and abilities that you can put on your character. So beyond the sort of customizing the exo route, you also have these things like implants, which you can imagine as like neural mods, things being plugged into your brain almost, which will give you different abilities, so health, energy abilities, stamina upgrades, things to that effect. And many more besides. Half the fun, of course, in a game like this, when you're starting to get to know the areas and the maps, is discovering these different implants and secret areas and things like that, where you'll be able to pick these things up and plug them in and give yourself awesome new abilities. And they also stack, many of them. For example, the abilities for the health upgrades. You can put multiples of them on, which will obviously give you more health. But each of your rigs has a limit to the amount of implants that you can plug in, and they're gated by the power level of the rig. So there are so many. This is what's so fun about this game, actually. And what's probably fun about the Dark Souls games as well, once you get into them, though I never really did, is that there are layers upon layers of systems that work well together and are integrated together, that makes sense in this universe, in this world that's been created by Deck 13. I really enjoy this universe. It has, well, all the combat is melee based, which is a nice change for science fiction, and everything has a very gritty, realistic feel to it. It's tech that you can look at and understand and think that might not be that far into the future. You know, a lot of these sort of robo exoskeleton elements and stuff like that remind me of, like, you know, car manufacturing plants and things to that effect. And a lot of the world's locations also reflect that. The area you'll kind of find yourself in is Warren, at the beginning of the game, is going for a job at this sort of mega corporation like Creo, which is kind of like, imagine if Facebook had gone and Facebook and Google had decided to fix the world and had possibly done questionable moral things to achieve those goals. And by possibly, I mean they've definitely done bad things. Definitely. And, you know, like I said, I don't want to talk about story too much, but things have gone wrong, and you are discovering what's gone wrong as you progress through the game. So I've talked about the leveling mechanics. I've talked about how the Souls-like elements come into play. You do a lot of the video, you'll see me in like your main little hub area, your little base area, which is like the bonfire from Souls, which is where you can upgrade. You can spend your tech scrap. You can scrap your other stuff and get more tech scrap from it. You can do your upgrades, like I mentioned. You can play with your implants and things to that effect. What I just thought was the intangible element that I really enjoyed about the Surge, which is the hardest part to talk about, is how the combat felt. So you've got dodges, you've got like blocks, you know, you've got basically your attacks are just two buttons. So you either have the overhand attack, which is a big sort of up or down swing with whatever weapon you use, or you have a horizontal attack. So vertical or horizontal attacks. And that's it, and I really like that. But where the variety comes from is, like, there are so many different types of weapon you can use, from single-handed to double-handed to single-rigged to double-rigged. What that means is weapon attached directly to the exo rig, or you can use staves or things like that. I actually really, like I said, I spec'd towards speed. So I was very much about staves and having the lighter armor and being able to get in, have a lot of stamina, you know, be able to strike quickly, retreat, strike again, retreat. Don't get me wrong though, this game isn't easy. Now, while it might have a better onboarding experience than Dark Souls, this is still that type of game. You will die, it's trial and error, you will die again and again and again. And it's actually quite funny because I really wanted to record me beating one of the bosses in the game. And I was throwing myself at this boss. I must have done it like 30 times, and it was challenging and hard, and I was dying and dying and dying. But I knew, you know, it's one of those great pieces of design where I knew exactly what I had to do. I was just failing to execute it well enough. And then I did, and I got so excited. I was screaming at the screen, I was pumped, but I forgot to then capture the video because I was so pumped. So I've not got any footage of me beating a boss in this game because you just get too involved. And my brain wasn't good enough to remember to actually capture that. So I apologise for that. I will blame the horrible cold I'm suffering from at the moment. But I just want to say, this game is cool as hell. It's so much fun. I have so much fun in this world. I find it so much more engaging than Dark Souls. I find it, like I said, it's a bit easier to get into. It's not an easier game, I don't think, but I found that the whole experience of getting into it was just much more user-friendly. And because of that, I really prefer it to the Dark Souls games. I'm a sucker for sci-fi. I do think this, as a setting, is more my jam. But hey, that might not be your jam, but I think this is an excellently well-produced game. There's plenty of replayability in here. It's a long game. There's lots of content. It's an exciting game. There's so much variety to how you can play this game. So many different types of weapons and different sort of character loadouts. I had so much fun experimenting with different builds, from heavies to slows to medium to big single weapon things like limbs I cut off of bosses to staves to everything in between, energy type weapons. There's so many things. I enjoy exploring. I enjoyed, you know, finding all the nooks and crannies of the world, going back to areas I'd already beaten and just like really getting in there and finding finding out where all the little hidden secrets were. I've spent lots of time on this game, and I highly recommend you check this game out. It is a great alternative to Dark Souls. You know, the fact is that we might not be seeing another Dark Souls game anyway for a long time. It is almost annoying that I can't review this game without referring to Dark Souls every 5 seconds, but that's the nature of the beast here. But I think what Deck 13 have done brilliantly is create a game within that genre, which will probably have its own name before long, and really differentiate itself from the competition. So that's the end of my review. I apologise if it's been an extra rambly one. I put that down to sickness right now on my part. But I really wanted to get this out and done for you guys at launch of the game, so you could have something to listen to and to watch, and to really give you the lowdown on the Surge. And it's been really good fun, and I can't wait to see what Deck 13 does next. Maybe they'll do some DLC for this. I really hope they do. And this has been a great game. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.